Thank you so much, Professor Murthy, for that very wonderful introduction. It was much more than it was necessary uh, to just initiate this talk, but I very much appreciate it. Could is the slide show up now? Could we have the first slide, the next slide, please? Or am I controlling this? Should I should I control it, or how does this work?
So we'll do it. We'll manage it.
Okay, so could we look at the first slide, the next slide? Yeah, that's it. That's it. Thank you. Um, that one, yes. Uh, so I want to try to frame the concept of peace leadership and education in as broad a context as possible. I would like to argue and elaborate the idea that peace is an integral concept for human beings, and there's at least three components that are we need to consider if we're looking at peace, leadership, and education. And they're listed here on this slide. The subjective component, that is human consciousness, the cultural component, the various cultures of peace and violence around the world, and the institution or structural component. Uh, as some of you may know, there's a well-known spiritual thinker named Ken Wilber who has put out something called all quadrants, a diagram of a complete look at our human situation. And he has a fourth component in his. He's got these three components. And then his fourth component is scientific development. And of course, that will be important. But I want to emphasize that these three, the subjective, the cultural, and the institutional, are most foundational if we're going to really uh, promote a peace transformation of our world system. Next slide, please. Uh, One of the things that people say is that peace is an ideal, but many people identify themselves as realist, and they say, "Well, I'm a realist, and look at the world is just not a peaceful place. And if you're going to be a realist, you have to realize that it's a dog eat dog world, and so on." But this does not understand, I think, this perspective of so-called realists does not understand that human beings uh, uh, are self-transcending creatures. Our consciousness, precisely because it can understand that that the world is a dog eat dog place, or the world is a place of conflict and violence and lack of peace, precisely because we can recognize that, means that we have within us a concept of peace, right? We would not be scandalized, as the slide says, by what is not peace if we did not have an intuitive understanding of what is and should be peace. So there's within human consciousness. This is what I refer to as the self-transcending aspect of human consciousness. The fact that each of us, is a subjectivity, conscious of the world as our object, and other people as the object of our subjectivity, already is a moment of self-transcendence. And as soon as we cognize that world and understand it, as soon as we make judgments about that world, we can see that our judgments about what is not right I say this is not right. This shouldn't be, or this is good. This should be, and so on. As soon as we make these judgments, we're implying that we already have a concept of peace within us. The difference between what is not right and what is right on all levels shows that our consciousness is something that transcends the world as we find it. If we find the world, realistically speaking, as a place of conflict and violence and so on, we're already in our consciousness. We've transcended that. Next slide, please. So I want to emphasize that peace is, as it says here, is a complex and integrated concept. It applies on many levels. I say I want peace within my family. I want peace with my wife. I want peace with my brothers and sisters. I want peace with my community. I want peace between nations. And I want inner peace, and so on. All these uses of the word peace show that it is an integral concept, and everywhere it is contrasted with what is not peace, and so on. And therefore, the idea of peace becomes a self-actualization of our human project. It's something that is what I have called in my last book a utopian horizon. You and I, human beings, live within a temporal continuum where we move from a past into a present, a dynamic present, and that present is always projecting a future. Right, this past to the present to the future, and in this dynamic present that you and I are living in our consciousness, we judge the past as not being adequate in one way or another. In other words, the past I should have done this differently, or this should not have happened. These people should not have been allowed to starve to death, or whatever we judge about the past. And at the same time, in this continuum of the present moment, we project into the future. If I'm judging that this should not have happened in the past, so in the future, I can project a world in which this does not happen, a world in which I have inner peace, a world in which I'm at peace with my family, a world in which nations are at peace with one another, and so on. So that's our utopian horizon, as I call it, of our consciousness. And another way of talking about that horizon in a general way is to say it's a vision of peace. So integral to human awareness is this utopian vision of peace. And utopian here doesn't mean unrealizable. It means that it's inevitably a complement of our capacity to judge what is not right about the world. So Gandhi, for example, I think had such a utopian horizon regarding peace, and he interrelated peace and justice and truth, right? Satyagraha means clinging to truth, right? And what is the truth that we're clinging to? Well, it's a comprehensive truth. It's a truth that includes all the dimensions of human existence, right? And it's the utopian horizon that this truth that we're clinging to needs to become actualized in human affairs. The truth of peace, so on. So peace includes all three dimensions that I've been mentioning. The dimension of subjectivity. I want peace within. The dimension of culture. We want cultures of peace, and our institutions. And I think that third point is something I want to emphasize as we go on in this presentation.